How can you use the Mohs Hardness Scale to check whether or not your crystals and minerals are the real deal? Now, for those of you who are perhaps unfamiliar with what the Mohs Hardness Scale is, this is a metric which was created by a gentleman called Friedrich Mohs, and it's essentially a diagnostic metric that we can use to determine the hardness of minerals. Now, minerals are going to have a very broad spectrum of different hardnesses, contingent on the mineral, and bear in mind there are thousands of different kinds of minerals. So what we do is we take 10. These are referred to as reference minerals. Now, starting from the softest right up until the hardest, this starts with talc, which is a 1, gypsum, which is a 2, calcite, which is a 3, fluorite, which is a 4, apatite, which is a 5, orthoclase feldspar, which is a 6, quartz, which is a 7, topaz, which is an 8, corundum, which is ruby and sapphire, as a 9, and then diamond as a 10. Now, how can you use this in order to diagnose specific crystals and minerals? Now, as I mentioned earlier, every single mineral is going to exhibit a fairly well documented Mohs hardness. Now, sometimes this is going to be sandwiched somewhere between, say, a 3 and a 4. So it might be something like a 3.5 or a 4.5, but we can still use the Mohs Hardness Scale in order to diagnose what these are. It's by no means the only diagnostic that you should use, but it's an extremely helpful diagnostic in order to familiarise yourself with what you might have and what you definitely don't have. Now, for example, if you've got something like quartz, which is a 7 as a reference mineral on the Mohs Hardness Scale, this means it will be scratched by topaz, which is an 8, but quartz will in turn scratch things like orthoclase feldspar. Now, same as in turn, something like calcite, which is a 3 on the Mohs Hardness Scale, will scratch something like gypsum, but it will in turn be scratched by something like fluorite. Now, this is going to extend to all manner of different minerals. So say, for example, if you've got a mineral and you're not familiar with the Mohs hardness, these are always going to be extremely well documented. So take what you think you have, reference it on a broad spectrum of sources on the internet, and then cross-reference it against other minerals that you might have in your collection. For example, if you've got something like, let's say, something that you assume might be comprised of resin, this is usually quite soft and is usually used in order to impersonate various other minerals. So to insulate yourself from this quite duplicitous practice of impersonating things that it absolutely objectively is not, take into account that it's often used in order to impersonate materials like quartz, which is quite a robust 7 on the Mohs Hardness Scale, whereas resin is generally about a 2.5, which means that resin will generally scratch something like gypsum, but it will in turn be scratched by something like calcite. So the Mohs Hardness Scale, although it's not the only diagnostic that you should use, familiarising yourself with that Mohs Hardness Scale in sequence is an enormously helpful diagnostic that you can perform to diagnose what you have and what you definitely don't. So to repeat, you've got talc at the beginning, you've got gypsum at number 2, you've got calcite at 3, fluorite at 4, apatite at 5, orthoclase feldspar at 6, quartz at 7, topaz at 8, corundum, so ruby and sapphire, at 9, and then it tops out at 10 with diamond.
If there's any other kind of topics you'd like us to cover, let us know in the comments.